Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om 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 Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 29. Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 29. Sa eva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Govrisham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranat Venu Ariramat Saeva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Govrisham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Ariramat Saeva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Govrisham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Ariramat Saeva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Govrisham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Ariramat
Saeva Godanam Lakshmya Niketam Sita Govrisham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranad Venur Ariramat. Would anyone online like to chant the verse? Is the word translation. Sa he Lord Krishna Eva certainly Godanam the treasure of cows Lakshmya by opulence Niketam reservoir Sita Govrisham beautiful cows and bulls Charayan herding Anugan the followers Gopan cowherd boys Ranat blowing Venu flute Ariramat enliven. While, here's a translation, while herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As he grew to 6 and 7 years old, the Lord was given charge of looking after the cows and bulls in the grazing grounds. He was the son of a well-to-do landholder who owned hundreds and thousands of cows. And according to Vedic economics, one is considered to be a rich man by the strength of his store of grains and cows. With only these two things, cows and grain, humanity can solve its eating problem. Human society needs only sufficient grain and sufficient cows to solve its economic problems. All other things but these two are artificial necessities created by man to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in things which are not needed. Lord Krishna, as the teacher of human society, personally showed by his acts that the mercantile community, or the Vaishyas, should herd cows and bulls and thus give protection to the valuable animals. According to Smriti regulation, the cow is the mother and the bull the father of the human being. The cow is the mother because just as one sucks the breast of one's mother, human society takes cow's milk. Similarly, the bull is the father of human society because the father earns for the children, just as the bull tills the ground to produce food grains. Human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and the mother. It is mentioned herein that the beautiful cows and bulls were of various checkered colors: red, black, green, yellow, ash, etc. And because of their colors and healthy, smiling features, the atmosphere was enlivening. Over and above all, the Lord used to play his celebrated flute. The sound vibrated by his flute would give his friends such transcendental pleasure that they would forget all the talks of the Brahmananda, which is so praised by the impersonalists. These cowherd boys, as will be explained by Sukadev Goswami, were living entities who had accumulated heaps of pious activities and thus were enjoying with the Lord in person and were hearing his transcendental flute. The Brahma Samhita 5.30 confirms the Lord's blowing his transcendental flute. Venam Karavantam Aravinda Dayalaya Taksham Baharvatam Samasi Ambula Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govindamadi Purusham Tam Maham Bhajami. Brahmaji said, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who plays on his transcendental flute. His eyes are like lotus flowers. He is decorated with peacock plumes, and his bodily color resembles a fresh black cloud, although his bodily features are more beautiful than millions of cupids. These are the special features of the Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Mantaya Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namah Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Puchani Nivashisha Sunyavadi Postata Desata Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gauravani Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning. Hare Krishna. So these, especially these last few verses, specifically speaking about this chapter is remembrance of Lord Krishna, and specifically these few verses here directly about Krishna's pastimes, his father, Vasudeva, and then going to the being afraid of Kamsa, bringing to the cow pastures of Maharaj Nanda, and then going along the Yamuna River, with the cowherd boys and calves, and here with the cowherd boys, childhood pastimes in Vrindavan, and then this very specifically talking about Lord Krishna as a cowherd boy responsible for herding cows, and his flute, and specifically his flute. So we're talking about Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so there's different ways of knowing Krishna. So these cowherd boys, they're just thinking Krishna is their friend, just their friend who delights them, they love playing with, they love spending time with. Some people know Krishna in different forms. So we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this is the supreme, so this is God. This is God. And so God is a 6 or 7 year old boy playing with cows and his boyfriends grazing. So God is a cowboy. And so we have American idea of a cowboy. I think some people might like that if you tell them, well, God's a cowboy. So they might, wow, So American idea of a cowboy is, herding cows, is on a horse, usually on a horse, and maybe a gun, because it's the Wild West, and you gotta, whatever, you're gonna be protected. And so it's like American cowboy. So this is a Vedic cowboy. The Vedic version of a cowboy has a flute. Prabhupada speaks about this in different purport it was a lecture class that this is maybe perhaps even today. I think at that time he was speaking in the 60s or 70s, that even today that the boys, the people responsible for the cows would have a flute to call the cows, or sing songs also. Singing songs. That's the life of a Vedic cowboy, singing songs and playing the flute to attract the cows. So very practically speaking, the flute is to call the cows. You have to move them around to different pastures, different grounds. So you're not over pasturing any certain grounds. You need to keep them moving to new pastures, greener pastures. There's lots of phrases and things that come from that. Moving on to greener pastures. So this is these are pastoral pastimes. I was thinking about even that word pastoral. We have pastor, like a pastor is like a preacher, leader of a congregation. So that comes like pastoral is like farming. Jesus, we have the idea of like a shepherd leading the sheep, taking care of the herd, taking care of the congregation. So these like pastoral, all these connotations. This is sattvic life, and then ultimately transcendental when speaking about Krishna and the herding these cows in Goloka Vrindavan. So it's a very practical tool. The flute for attracting the cows, and then Krishna uses it for so much more. It's transcendentally, he uses it for so much more that he instructs Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is quoted here by Prabhupada in the purport, and so Krishna instructs Lord Brahma by playing his flute, and Lord Brahma receives that internally as meditation. And so I was thinking about this. Krishna is the cowherd boy. So there's Krishna's cowherd boy, and there's Krishna as Krishna's flute that I want to talk about. I think first I want to speak about Krishna as a person. Krishna is a person, so God is a person. So I heard this I heard this from a devotee, and I appreciated like this kind of description. I'm not going to like quote it or read it. Maybe I'll could share it later. But about like the three aspects of God realization. I really like the way he presented it. And so like we're here talking about God, that's spiritual. We want a relationship with God, connection with God, universally. That's whatever, whether to say God or just spirit, or we want that's universally religious process or spiritual process. We want connection with the source, the supreme, the divine. So, but there's three aspects of the divine, of the supreme. And so the first level, Brahman realization, is like, we may have an experience of feeling really connected and feeling at home and peaceful, and to see the connection and the interdependency and the interconnection of all living entities and everything in the world. And maybe it could even be induced by some chemical or whatever, but there's a oneness feeling. And so with practice, then like yoga practice, meditation, whatever, then it's possible to like stay there, to like stay in that consciousness of the oneness, the interconnectedness, the oneness. That's like the first level, Brahman realization. And then beyond that, Brahman realization, then if theoretically, if you're in that consciousness, then there's a personality, there's a voice behind that oneness, that interconnection, that oneness. There's a voice, and then it's possible. Actually, the voice is always speaking to us, but then through practice and through purification, then we can hear that voice more clearly and take instruction from that voice. And so that there's a voice within us, that from the divine within the heart, that's speaking to us. And then that's like Paramatma realization, is that there's something beyond, there's something behind that, the oneness, the oneness, there's something behind that, a personality, perhaps a voice, some intelligence, some intelligence that's instructing us. And then okay, beyond that, and I like this like analogy that of like whenever we're a child and we think about our parents, like a very young child, let's say, like very, very young child, our parents, or even like a teacher at school or something, that we just kind of see that they just, all their life, we just think revolves all around us, that they're just there. Like it's common, like if a child sees a teacher like outside of the classroom for the first time, like, what are they doing here? Like, aren't they just in the class just waiting for me to come and serve me? Or like grandparents, like, oh, what do grandparents do whenever I'm not there? They just wait for me to come, and then so they can spoil me. Or, oh, my parents, my parents, they don't have a life outside of me, and they just take care of me. So that's like a very immature, self-centered conception of life and things around me. And so we can also, perhaps we have that conception with God, that, oh, well, is God's just there to supply order supplier, just the demands, whatever I'm praying for, whatever I need, he supplies it to me and looks after me, protects me, gives me instruction. Paramatma, realization, it gives me instruction, facilitates my life and whatever. But then, so similarly, as we grow older, we see, oh wow, Mrs. Boggs, my kindergarten teacher, she has a husband, and she has friends, and she might has a social life where she goes and socializes with other maybe teachers, or not even other teachers, just regular people. And my parents, wow, okay, so it's not just all about me. It goes to work. They have friends, and they have dreams and aspirations and thoughts and concerns, and that are nothing to do about me. And so it's like this is a more mature realization, experience of life. And so similarly with God, then it's like, okay, so yeah, there's this voice that's instructing me, Parampara. Even beyond that, there's a person, and that person has friends and a girlfriend, and has intimate conversations and intimate pastimes and relationships that beyond just facilitating my needs and my desires, and karma, and give it another body at the time of death, or whatever, arranging the mechanisms of life and the material world and everything. So yeah, that's to me that makes sense. To me, that makes sense. That it'd be quite limiting for God, who is supposed to be unlimited by definition, of God, the divine is so supreme, that it would be quite limiting to say, oh no, you don't have your own friends, you don't have your own pastime, you don't have your own life. Your life is just to serve me, support me, receive my worship, of course, okay, but reciprocate and give back, and manage things. Be rather limiting, and it's also rather self-centered, also, to have that kind of conception with God. So here's like a expansive conception of God, that God has many forms, many pastimes, and so then we have Krishna's pastimes. Childhood pastimes are very special, very unique, and that we understand that these are the original. This is the original form of God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So not just that God has a personality and Krishna is one of those personalities, or that God has a form, Krishna is one of those forms, that this is the original form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the original pastimes, original meaning origin, meaning source, that these pastimes are the source of all other incarnations, all other forms of God, all other divine sparks, or anything we know of as divine or spiritual or material. This is the origin. So that's kind of another perplexity, is that it's not even just oh yeah, well, because it can make sense perhaps that one of the things, God all powerful, okay, one of the things that I would, if I was God, or just think about the conception of God, then it makes sense that God would like to go play in with his flute and the cowherd boys in the beautiful land, and that makes it. Why wouldn't he want to do that? But not just that. That's one of the things that he likes to do. That's his original pastimes. That's actually the source of everything. Is this Krishna that's delighting the cowherd boys by playing his flute. So, because, and I can perhaps have this conception also that, well, it's not very wonderful, it's not very spectacular, it's not very super powerful. I mean, okay, supreme personality of Godhead, the source of everything. Okay, you can just like destroy things and create, galaxies, universes, and just collapse just blink of an eye. And but Krishna does all that also. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does all those things also, just in this form of Mahavishnu. He just everything in creation just by inhaling and exhaling. So no real effort or nothing. Just universes emanating from his pores, in the form of Mahavishnu. So, and he's just doing that while he's sleeping. So that's kind of like, yeah, so that's no big deal. So that's not that enlivening. It seems like based on that experience, it seems like that's not as very enlivening for Supreme Personality of Godhead to create universals. He does that in his sleep. No big deal. So, all right, so get out of that conception is for me, to get out of that conception of like, okay, it needs to be spectacular. So what really is spectacular? So what really is wonderful? What is really amazing? And so it seems that based on understanding from Prabhupada that what's really enlivening for Krishna is to have reciprocating relationships with spirit souls, with individuals that have free will. That and then there's a dance. There's a dance. There's a relationship. There's that's exciting. That's enlivening. That's really wonderful. That's really amazing. That to have these relationships with these cows, these calves, and to protect them, and to have these relationships with cowherd boys like Madhu Mangala, who's always wanting ladus and sweets, and Subal, his very intimate friend Subal, who he can send messages to Radharani through Subal, or sometimes Subal dresses up as a as a cowherd girl and infiltrates with Radharani to send messages, because Radharani's parents don't want her messing with this mischievous cowherd boy, because so that's what's really wonderful, and that's what's really exciting for Krishna is that those kind of experiences, creating galaxies, does that in his sleep. So that this is the original acts, the original form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, and Prabhupada talks about Prabhupada highlights his flute. There's a lot in this purport. There's a lot in this purport, actually. And here's a purport. I'll read this from Prabhupada. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 21.144. I'll read the translation. The vibration of his flute is just like a bird that creates a nest within the ears of the gopis and always remains prominent there, not allowing any other sound to enter their ears. Indeed, the gopis cannot hear anything else, nor are they able to concentrate on anything else, not even to give a suitable reply. Such are the effects of the vibration of Lord Krishna's flute. So we talked about, practically speaking, the flute is to call the cows, the different pasturing grounds, call them home. And then, but Krishna is so much more. Like he's enchanting the gopis. It's like just like a bird creates a nest within the ears of the gopis and remains there. The vibrations of Krishna's flute this is purport. That was the translation. Here's the purport by Srila Prabhupada. The vibration of Krishna's flute is always prominent in the ears of the gopis. Naturally, they cannot hear anything else. Constant remembrance of the holy sound of Krishna's flute keeps them enlightened and enlivened, and thus they do not allow any other sound to enter their ears. Since their attention is fixed on Krishna's flute, they cannot divert their minds to any other subject. In other words, a devotee who has heard the sound of Krishna's flute forgets to talk or hear of any other subject. This vibration of Krishna's flute is represented by the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra. A serious devotee of the Lord who chants and hears this transcendental vibration becomes so accustomed to it that he cannot divert his attention to any subject matter not related to Krishna's blissful characteristics and paraphernalia. So this is an instance where Prabhupada is recommending to be like the gopis, in the sense of, okay, the gopis hear Krishna's flute and they become enchanted. They drop everything that they're doing. And it creates like a bird creating a nest into the ears, and they don't hear anything else, and it just it captures their attention, and then their attention is directed only on that, nothing else matters. And so this is like for the pure devotee, and for us to aspire that, yeah, but the representation of Krishna's flute is the holy name, Krishna's holy name. They're non-different, actually. So Krishna's paraphernalia, which includes his flute, Venu, flute. So Krishna's paraphernalia is non-different from himself. And also his name, the holy mantras. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. That's non-different from Krishna. That's the nature of absolute. Nature of absolute means that there is no difference between the name, the form, the pastimes, the paraphernalia, that they're all one and the same, equal in potency and quality. And so Maha-Mantra is the same as Krishna's flute, and that we want to allow ourselves to be attracted and enchanted. And I say allow ourselves because it's a natural process, because it is, Prabhupada says, it's not an artificial imposition on the mind. So it's nothing that we need to force or make ourselves. We need to like open up and allow ourselves. And the problem is why we're not allowing ourselves is because we've contaminated. We've allowed ourselves to be covered over by more of Krishna's external energy, Mahamaya. So we become illusioned and dirty, contaminated. Our mind is dirty. So our senses are dull and dirty and not receptive to spiritual vibration, not fully open. And so that's the process why Prabhupada recommends 4 regulative principles. 4 regulative principles is very practical cleansing process, very practical, very grounded process to purify the senses. It's kind of like gross and subtle. It's subtle. It can be subtle, but it's also like a gross cleaning of the senses. And then the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra is like the subtle and spiritual cleansing of the diamond. But so Prabhupada recommends these 4 regulative principles, and plus 4 regulative principles of vegetarian diet. That's one. He talks about killing cows and bulls here. So that's one. It's Prabhupada's very heavy language. That one thing he mentions, artificial necessities. So that's kind of like unnecessary necessities. That's another way of saying that we've created these. And I appreciate, because Prabhupada says that all these other things besides grain and cows, that's all we need is grain and cows. And besides these things, all other things are created by man to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in things which are not needed. So that's rather demoniac. And so we could kind of, it'd be easy to point the finger, oh, these demons, these people in charge, these whatever name you want to give, conspiracy wise or whatever, to those who are in power and in charge. They've created all these things to distract us and to waste our time, to kill our valuable life at the human level. But Prabhupada just says it was created by man. And so that includes us. It's created by humans. It is created by us. So it's not some other category of people, of living entities. All these things were created by man, to kill his valuable life at the human level and waste his time in which things are not needed. So I get from that language there's some inclusivity, because it's not just like, yeah, these demons have created these things to waste our time and distract us from Krishna consciousness. Like, no, we've done it. And we're part of this. So there's another, and then also he says that the cow is like the mother, the bull is like the father, and that human society will kill its spirit of life by killing the father and the mother. Kill its spirit of life. So that's so proper vegetarian diet, so that we're not doing that. Vegetarian diet, and to not engage in illicit sex. Illicit sex. A sex meaning illicit, meaning outside of varnashram dharma, outside of the recommended, regulated principles of spiritual life, and no intoxication. So like to be sober, as very practical, clean way, sober and clean, and then no gambling. Those are to purify the senses, so that we are attracted to Krishna's flute. Krishna's flute, the name of the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra, and also to chant the name of Krishna. So at least minimum of 16 rounds. So just like Prabhupada says in this purport here, that serious devotee of the Lord who chants and hears this transcendental vibration becomes so accustomed to it that he cannot divert his attention to any subject matter not related to Krishna's blissful characteristics and paraphernalia. So the way that we become accustomed to it is to chant it a lot, all the time, as much as possible. So a minimum of 16 rounds per day. And then, yeah, I can have some glimpse of this, that, yeah, okay, you're chanting 16 rounds, and then if I finish earlier than usual, then I'm kind of just like, I'm accustomed to chanting. So then I was like, I just keep chanting, or just spontaneously Krishna's name coming out of my mouth, even if I'm not trying to or thinking to. So that's how we become accustomed to it, and then we're not diverting our attention to other things. We're not attracted to other things, material things. And then also, so it's like by purifying the senses and becoming accustomed to hearing the sound of the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra, chanting the sound of the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra, then our attention is not diverted. And also, whatever we do, and one way of not diverting the attention is that when we do come into contact with something that is material, then we see it, we spiritualize it, we see it, and we spiritualize how it's connected to Krishna. So it's not just like negating. It's not just like, oh, I want, this book or these people, this relationship. I'm not going to divert my attention there because I'm so focused on the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantras, Krishna's flute. It's that, no, we can be in those relationships, be in that experience, whatever it may be, and see it through the lens of Krishna's flute and the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra and how it's connected to Krishna, spiritualize that relationship. But that's a part of not diverting the attention, is wherever we give our attention, that we're spiritualizing it and seeing it as connected to Krishna, and how to connect it to Krishna. So yeah, this so Prabhupada glorifying the cow here, really. I mean, there's talk about grains and cows and economic problems. That's interesting, and it's true. It is true. And but what I want to highlight here is like the glorification of the cow, and that how important it is. What it comes up for me is the importance of the one in front of the zero, because like, okay, so we have this principle, don't kill the cows, and that's universal, and don't kill animals, and be vegetarian. So that's a principle. But like the one in front of the zeros is that, okay, because by itself it's just a zero. It's like the vegetarian diet. Prabhupada says, elephants are vegetarian, the monkeys are vegetarian, or some monkey like that. So they're vegetarians. It's not a big deal. And so that's a zero by itself. The one in front of the zeros is that, well, we want to engage in Krishna's service and satisfy the senses of Krishna. And so Krishna accepts certain foodstuffs. So let's offer the vegetarian foodstuffs. He doesn't accept non-vegetarian foodstuffs. So let's offer the vegetarian foodstuffs to Krishna in the form of in his enjoyment, and then we receive it back as mercy of prasadam. That's the one in front of the zeros. And I can see that in society that people probably, because of Prabhupada coming to the West and spreading this Hare Krishna movement, and with vegetarianism being a principle, because he was so successful, then vegetarianism has spread, and but then you can see, but without the one in front of it, it's just another zero, and it's actually under the influence of Kali Yuga, it's just going to become more degraded, and it doesn't really make any difference. Like we see the so vegetarianism is like, now it's like, okay, plant-based. There's so many plant-based meat alternatives, which seems like a good thing, because it's like, oh, it's a good thing. But then we see, I'm seeing that it's popular. So there's all these fake burgers and fake chicken and fake fish and all this stuff. And then it's like, it seems like a good thing, but then actually, like, these things are full of chemicals and super processed, and they're like laboratory experiments, because they're trying to recreate the meat flavor, and they want like blood and juicy stuff, but without the blood. So then it's just like chemicals in a laboratory. And then it's like, okay, well, if there's any, or speaking on the level of zeros, like if there is any health benefit to like not eating the meat, it's like, it's not really happening, because you're eating some higher, more processed chemical thing rather than like the meat thing. And so then it's just like a mess. And then there's like, okay, so we think, okay, don't kill the cows. Oh, so cows are like the same as, chickens or pigs, without the one in front of the zero of like coming, coming from Krishna ultimately, the spiritual principles, Vedic society. Then it's like, oh, well, cows, yeah, we shouldn't kill the animals. Oh, we shouldn't drink milk either. So there's like a vegan movement, because, oh, the cows are harmed, or it's like, oh, taking from the cows is not natural. We should drink, we shouldn't drink cow's milk or whatever. So then there's like the vegan movement, to where, so cows rejected. So the mother's milk is, like Prabhupada says, cows are one of our 7 mothers, and that human society drinks the milk of cows. So then we're rejecting like mother's milk. And then that's like, it's actually offensive to like, to the cow, to like, oh, the cow is about the same as a pig or a chicken or whatever else. That's in the Vedic society, and directly from Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, the origin of everything spiritual, material, that there's an intimate connection with cows. The cow has a very special, unique place in human society, very honored position, sacred position. So without the one in front of the zeros, then it's like, okay, even vegetarianism, it's kind of like that. What good is it really doing? What progress is it really making? So it's important to have the one in front of the zeros, the spiritual understanding. Ultimately, to properly place the one in front of the zeros, then we need to have instruction, and that comes to the spiritual master. It comes from accepting a bona fide spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada is that bona fide spiritual master. And then so, hearing from Prabhupada, then we learn how to really properly place the one in front of the zeros, so that it's not just some zero, that we're not following some principle or some trend or fad that ends up being more degraded than if it would be without it. Let's see. So also, before I close, I wanted to just share a little personal experience. Is this the verse that this verse from Brahma Samhita, is this the verse you usually you quote often in classes, or is this a different one?
It's one of them I quote often.
Yeah.
It's one of them Prabhupada quotes often. It's in the Govindam prayers. It's one of the two verses. Yeah, it's one of the most quoted verses in Brahma Samhita. Venum Krananta. Yes.
It's nice. It's one to remember, one to memorize.
Yes, for sure.
And so Krishna's flute, like so Krishna's flute attracting the gopis, attracting the cows, and chanting the cowherd boys. So I just had this experience. So I just went on a family trip, and I heard something that there's a difference between a family trip and a vacation, and that that the difference is that so after you go on a family trip, then you need a vacation to recover from the family trip. So that's the difference between a family trip and a vacation. And then so I just went on a family trip and had some experience around Asheville, North Carolina. And yeah, just the power, I guess what's alive for me is like the power of this process that Prabhupada gave, how far reaching, and how it works, how this process works. And so specifically, we have a Krishna's flute, and then the Hare Krishna Maha-Mantra is a representation of that, incarnation of that. And then like we were just going to a 4th of July festival in North Carolina, in Asheville, and I didn't have any spiritual intentions necessarily. It's kind of wandering in the desert or the forest perhaps. And then as soon as I got out of the car, there's lots of music playing. Actually, there's like a band, like it was loud. There's a lot of stuff going on, but kartals have a very piercing sound, and they can kind of cut through a lot. So I got out. I was like, that sounds like kartal. It sounds like kirtan somewhere, in all this mass of people. And I was like, oh, I was hearing it. You hear that? I was like trying to tell my son, you hear that? It sounds like nobody else was really paying attention. I was like, I think I hear. I'm gonna go follow. So then we followed, and I found these devotees were chanting. There's 3 devotees chanting Hare Krishna, sitting down, singing. I joined them, and of course they were very enlivened to see another devotee join them, and so it was just like a very powerful experience for me to like how attractive the process is, and how it works, how it really works to attract the attention and to bring the followers. Like Prabhupada, in the translation, it says his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. that by Krishna's playing his flute, he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Krishna's name and Krishna's these instruments used in Krishna's service are non-different. Like kartals, mridanga, harmonium. If they're used in Krishna's service, they're non-different from him. That it was like engaging me and enlivening me and attracting me. And then just like the power of just being a devotee. Yeah, I don't have so much of a presentation. I'm not like walking around wearing tilak or like shaved head, or but at least I had like Tulsi. I have Tulsi mala, Kunti mala on, and so like there was like 3 different times where around the town that somebody was just like, "Oh, are you a devotee?" They could see like, and they're like, "Oh, I grew up with devotees," or like, so again, it was like kind of like wandering in the desert. Like here, these people kind of wandering in the desert, and they don't have so much association in that area, and they're like so enlivened to like see another devotee. Like, "Oh, are you a devotee? Where like, do you live here?" Because we have that much engagement, don't have that much association, and so yeah, because like Prabhupada said that and when you see this process to dress like a devotee or to present yourself as a devotee, then that supports others in their Krishna consciousness. If they see you and they remember Krishna, or you see a devotee, then you remember Krishna. So it's a very powerful process. And there's a responsibility also, because what was I doing? What am I doing at this time? Whenever I'm being recognized or being, or remembering, for somebody remembering about Krishna, and then I'm representing, I'm a representative of Krishna, representative of Srila Prabhupada. And so he has a responsibility with that. And also I felt definitely felt Paramatma's facilitation to show like, oh, this is a path, for me to walk on, to perhaps now in the future that the others are looking, oh, you're representing Krishna, you're representing Prabhupada's movement, and so I need be ready and willing and able to reciprocate, to give Srila Prabhupada, to give Krishna. At that time, I wasn't so ready to give. We gave something, some email address or website, but to be ready, willing and able to represent Srila Prabhupada's movement, even when you're not intending to, or not consciously intending to. Let's see. Before we close, I think Krishna's flute. Prabhupada says that Krishna's flute can be heard in the 10th canto. The 10th canto is like hearing Krishna's flute, reading in the 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. All right. I think I'll read the verse again. Saiva Godanam Lakshma Niketam Sita Govisham Charayan Anugan Gopan Ranadvenur Ariramat. While herding the very beautiful bulls, the Lord, who was the reservoir of all opulence and fortune, used to blow his flute, and thus he enlivened his faithful followers, the cowherd boys. Just one more thing, Prabhupada mentions Krishna as a reservoir of all opulence and fortune, and that's one of the 6 opulences: fortune and also fame. Fame is one of the opulences of Krishna, and so I was experiencing that because, and Rohini remarked it also, like whenever these people approached us, it's like we were famous. There's like, "Are you a devotee?" And I think, remember that, like Prabhupada's devotees, people were talking like the devotees, because mostly, I mean, Prabhupada's movement, I mean, still today, but especially like at that time, the devotees were doing so many amazing things all around the world, and so it wasn't, when people talk about, it wasn't that I met Prabhupada or, oh, I met, for most people, at least it wasn't like, oh, I met Prabhupada or I heard from Prabhupada. I went to the temple and I heard from Prabhupada. I went to the temple and I heard Prabhupada speak, or I saw Prabhupada. It was like I met the devotees. That's most people's exposure and experience. The majority of personal in the personal form, in person relating is with the devotees. So I experienced a little bit of that, of like, it was like we were famous. Like, are you a devotee? Like, yeah, I'm a devotee. Yeah. So of course that could be get the ego puffed up or whatever, but also it was like humbling in a sense of like, yeah, this is Krishna's fame and Krishna's name and attractiveness, and that I get an opportunity to be associated with that. How fortunate I am to be associated with that, and the responsibility that comes with that. So that was my experience, my little personal experience. What's life for me. I would be glad to hear your comments and questions and anything else anyone would like to share at this time. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Parampara. Aspects of your class there, including, yeah, it makes sense that our kindergarten teacher actually she has her hobbies and she has her friends, she has a recreation, she has her whole life, But in kindergarten, I wouldn't realize that. So that make that Sri Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And then I appreciate hearing your Asheville experience. Yeah, so I got deeper realization. Maybe I should move on. Like I think it's in the proper. You're famous for all of the three worlds, right? So a devotee, one gets more that's it's just a specialness. Yeah, of course, like we could to think, oh, I'm a devotee, so like aspiring to be a devotee of Krishna. Prabhupada sometimes said, like to be a devotee, that's a thing. But we're servants. We're servants. And so sounds like super soul conspired in some transcendental ways for you and the family to deepen your remembrance of Krishna and give you opportunities to enliven the devotees.
Right. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Enliven the devotees. Yeah. Verse, Krishna's blowing his flute, enliven his faithful followers, enliven the cowherd boys. So yeah, there's something. Yes, it's pastoral. Krishna playing the flute, bringing back home, like calling the cows back home. It's there's sentiment there. I don't think it's sentimental, but there's there's sentiment there of at the end of the day, pastoral, on the river, Yamuna, Vrindavan, playing the flute, calling the cows back home. And so that's right. And then like Lord Chaitanya is not playing a flute. He's chanting Hare Krishna through the streets, Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan. He's doing the same thing, calling the cows, calling the servants, calling the devotees, calling them back home, back to Godhead. There's some sentiment, beautiful, like poetry there. Appreciate it. Gajendra, Prabhu. You're muted at this right now.
Thank you. Sloppy thumb work. Thank you very much for really nice class, very interesting, and touched upon a wide range of things that I all found stimulating. I did want to comment, on the area where you were, talking about, meat eating and different products that are coming up, and I was reflecting on that. And what came to me is there's a saying, something along the lines of, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And I think if the goal is pure devotional service, which is something I personally only have a faint inkling of, and even that faint inkling is so amazing to me compared to normal material consciousness and energy. So that's something that I'm wanting to pursue. And so I look at this idea of the modes of nature, and there is some knowledge that people get, like they get some sense of knowledge from the mode of goodness. And therefore there may be that sense, some energy, some truth associated with that, like, oh, don't kill the animal, don't eat meat. But with the lack of, I think, a real understanding of the purpose of life and pure devotional service, without having a clear direction of what the actual goal is, of what the actual knowledge is, from having heard that from the words of Sri Krishna or his representative, that little bit of knowledge can very much become a trap and go into strange places. Like you mentioned, the different types of foods, like sort of imitation, and it just seems so far away to me what they're doing. Like it actually is about what you were saying, like in a more pastoral setting, really in the mode of goodness, but also with the one that you mentioned, the transcendence of actually wanting to serve with love God. What one is left with is that little inkling that really goes, from my view, in a lot of really weird places, because going to Publix or Hitchcock's and spending money that was made in various ways is really far removed from protecting a cow. So there is this commonality of maybe not eating meat or not wanting to contribute to animal slaughter, which is good. But the problem is, without that, again, that clear goal, that higher direction and instruction, what I see in my observances from a lot of groups, so that I've somewhat supported in the past, charitably, not mainly, but to a degree, is that it's become very, very lost and going into really strange places, which I won't get into, but it also touches upon a very fundamental thing. It's say the beginning of spiritual knowledge in a very basic, fundamental way, is to distinguish between ourselves as spirit and our material body. We're not this body. And I've noticed that there's an alignment now of these same groups, like, animal rights, vegan groups that have become very, I'm going to try to keep this short, sorry, immersed in it's kind of intriguing to me to observe, but we just finished what's called Pride Month, the LGBTQIA month. I don't know if you caught wind of it, but and all my emails and contacts. It's just, there was a flood. And it's, I kind of appreciate like, oh yeah, people having these different gender identities and transgender, there's that sense that, oh, I'm not this body. Like I was born a particular body and I'm not this body because I feel this other thing. I have this different identity. And it's kind of like a little bit of realization of that. I'm not this body, I'm something else, but without the clear direction and understanding, it gets really confused to where you have like children being operated on surgically to, the kid can't even like make any decisions of his life, but he's like having his body surgically altered, he or she. And I've noticed that these two groups have come together. These two groups have come together, like the animal rights groups, the environmental groups have really embraced this. So I'm just seeing at large this whole, from my perspective, that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, kind of. If that knowledge is not being sourced from a clear and complete package, I just see a lot of problems.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm sorry for going on so long, but
I appreciate, the phrasing you were like, goes to weird places, you can go to strange places, and even like, destructive, dark, demonic kind of places. And that, right, you mentioned, yes, spiritual principle, like, so I was mentioning how they're, like, vegetarianism is a zero. Yeah, and then like, and like, so yeah, like a one in front of the zero would be like, okay, starting with the fundamental ABC kind of spiritual principles of, the distinction between spirit and matter, between the soul and the body. And then you highlighted even an example of like maybe there is some glimpse, some glimpse of that knowledge, but then without being properly sourced or properly guided, without spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, then that can go to all kinds of different places. So that's what I'm hearing and kind of resonating with, is that what comes up for me is there's lots of it's like, making progress is good. Making progress is good if we have a goal and we're making progress towards a goal. That's a good thing. Assuming our goal is a good goal. So it's like there's relativity when it comes to like progress and progressivism, making progress. So there's a relativity there. It's not an absolute thing to make progress. So like, all right, so if we have the goal of Srila Prabhupada's goal, Lord Chaitanya's goal, and we make that our goal, and then whatever we're doing is progressive. Prabhupada was very progressive, compared to what was happening in India at that time, Vaishnavism. So he was very progressive. So to be out of the box, to be progressive, to make progress on our goal, and then like that's a good thing. And then but progress just for the sake of progress, or if the goal doesn't have the one in front, then it can be more destructive, go to weird places, dark, demonic places. So that's kind of what's alive for me in that sharing, is like, what's our goal? What are we making progress on? What are we progressing towards? And if it's and ultimately we're progressing towards, Prabhupada's vision, Lord Chaitanya's goal, Lord Chaitanya's vision, then that's good progress.
There's the airport analogy. The airport, like it is progress to get to the airport. At the same time, if we're stuck there, then in a sense we haven't made much progress. And then even like to extend what you said, I'm thinking that there's a song we play in the advanced seminar, and the lyrics are not knowledge is a deadly friend when in the hands of fools. And so yes, that because even if we go to the airport, but look, let's say, okay, here we are. So say if we get to the Orlando airport, and say if New York represents transcendence, but actually we're going towards London or Houston or Los Angeles, then okay, yeah, then like, all right, through the airport, some progress, and that might be vegetarianism, some understanding of not the body. But otherwise, yeah, that's the thing, like Prabhupada representing the acharyas, just stressing that if it keeps us, if we don't have a goal that will really liberate us from this whole cycle of birth, death, old age, disease, the real problems, then it's just ugly. And then even the sattva becomes, as you said, it becomes a trap, and it just becomes this agonizing mess. And Gajendra Prabhu, yes, I'm not even keeping up with things, but he's like, children are being operated on so that the gender is this, and like, yes, kind of like, this isn't helping, actually it's going the other way. So like, to understand what is the transcendental goal and to go for it, and then cultivating sattva is a wonderful platform towards that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I see Bhakti Devin has his hand up.
I did. Well, just before Devin, it reminds me of also when you say like instrumental virtue, like open-mindedness being an instrumental virtue, not like
not the goal in itself.
Not the goal in itself. So it's an instrument to get us where we want it. So that's it's like, even sattva can become it's still material, so it's can be ugly, ultimately ugly, and perhaps miserable and destructive in a sense. Back to Devin Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhus. I'm in the car with Sham Das. We're going down to Micanopy. We're on Payne's Prairie right now. There's a lot of lotuses, Florida lotuses all over the place. Nice. And appreciating in your class earlier, the example, I felt humbled by your sharing your example about the kindergarten teacher. Mrs. Harris was my kindergarten teacher, and her first grade teacher. And one day I did meet her husband. So it's true. Your example is true. It's actually true. They do have lives. And I got to find that out one day in my adult life. I met her 25 years later. But I really appreciated that example, because I constantly notice, not notice that I slip back into, everything revolves around me. I do that all the time, unconsciously, maybe consciously at times, but unconsciously I'm doing it a lot, most of the time. So I was humbled by that example, particularly I related with. And then later I was disturbed noticing that where my mind went when you shared about, just how, examples about how Krishna is a person, a cowherd boy, he has a life, right? Coming out of that same example about the teachers aren't just there for us. It's like Krishna is living a whole, full, unlimited life. And he's the original personality. He's a person. And that my mind went to like original personality. So God, Krishna is a person, like, but original. So it's like, where did he even come from? I don't know. My mind went to that existential question, like, why are we here? Why is all this here? Why is there a person that, in the relationship is like yeah, so it's disturbing because that's my mind wasn't satisfied with, okay, there's the original person, and then but so there's nothing before that. I don't know, just that like a conclusive package, I guess, is what, and then I realized, oh, this is it. Like, I understand what's happening a bit in the package, just relatively, but then like that's it. That's the it's like I don't know. My mind found a way to just have a problem with that. So I'm just revealing what was happening for me.
Revealing your mind. You're revealing your mind and your some existential anxiety or why are we here? What's before Krishna? Yeah, Krishna is the origin of all of all. So yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit, that okay, Krishna's creating universes in his sleep, so that's not so exciting. Emanating universes, that's not so exciting. What is exciting for him is reciprocating with the gopis and sending messages, sneaking in, finding ways to get close to Radharani with Subal and playing with the cowherd boys and doing tricks with each other. And so that's like, that reciprocation between with other living beings, with other entities, reciprocation, and ultimately they have free will, and that those kind of voluntary exchanges, that's what's pleasing. So we're here because Krishna desired it, and it's pleasing for Krishna. What do you think? Why are we here?
Well, my understanding is we exist to expand Krishna's bliss. As far as the time question, well, that's the whole thing. Like this, when you say eternal pastime, eternal doesn't mean a long time. Eternal means outside of time altogether. Sometimes we reference the very beginning of the Hebrew Bible, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Meaning that, okay, so like the creator, like if I create something, I'm outside of that which I create. So Krishna is the creator of time and space. So he's outside of material time and space. So that whole realm, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's name, that it's outside of time altogether. So we can say, like, let's say from a grammatical point of view, it's like, well, it makes sense to say, oh, okay, but what existed before God? So like grammatically it makes sense, but logically it doesn't. Just like if I say, okay, the 14th floor is the top floor of the building. Okay, so what's the floor above the top floor? So grammatically the question makes sense, but logically it doesn't, because top floor means the floor above which there is no other. So this whole timeless eternal realm exists outside of material time and space. And even in one sense, like even the sense that we're talking about eternity, it's hard to conceive, impossible to conceive it with your mind. But like I think it's something to consider, that just the fact that we can talk about eternity means that somewhere in there we must have some experience of it, some experience of some experience outside of material time and space, even the fact that we can talk about it. Okay, think like that. So because the soul exists in that timeless realm. Now to realize it with material mind and intelligence and senses, we won't realize it. We can realize it to the extent we give ourselves to bhakti. We give ourselves to bhakti, the process of bhakti, through the bona fide spiritual master. And then we get more and more glimpses of realization. And at the same time, we have some, because the idea is as we come towards sattva, even what to speak of transcendence. This is very like Einstein. Prabhupada would appreciate Einstein. He got it right. Like as we come towards sattva, as one goes faster and faster, then time slows down. So as we even like it's very common in a Safeto seminar, right? It's like people said, oh, this is like a timeless space. Like I had no idea. Was that 10 minutes? Was that 5 hours? It was just a completely timeless space. Because sattva means this like, we're not lamenting about the past. There's no grungy stuff. It's full presence, full devotion to self-realization, engage in what the soul was meant to do, turn towards itself, turn towards source, like that, in a spirit of devotion. Yeah, okay. It's a timeless space. So as we get towards sattva, towards Brahma Loka, then we experience that timelessness. And then Shuddha Sattva, that's complete pure bhakti. Then time, Prabhupada uses the terminology, time is conspicuous by its absence. So the more we go towards sattva and even more towards Shuddha Sattva, then we get more and more of an experience of the soul's natural consciousness in timelessness, in that place where, to quote Brahma Samhita, where every word is a song, every step is a dance, and timeless means like it could sattva, because this whole creation, right? Like creation is rajas and destruction is tamas. Okay, and sattva is maintenance. So that the Vaikuntha, the Goloka Vrindavan, that whole world, that whole consciousness, it's sattva. Means there's no tamas, means there's no destruction. There's no rajas, there's no creation. Every moment exists in eternity. Every moment exists in eternity. And that's probably what I often quote, that Einstein kind of had it right. That's it, like as we had in terms of speed, but like as you approach certain conditions, then time slows down till the speed of light, like that. So as we approach Brahma Loka, then time slows down because it becomes more and more sattva. Hare Krishna.
Right. As you approach singularity or time wave zero, or something like that.
Yeah, they have their terminology.
So
they're,
it's like
they're looking for.
they don't know what happens then. They think, oh, you just become annihilated or something. If you get to that point where time slows down to zero, then you must be annihilated because there has to be time. There's no conception of a thing without time. So they have within the box of time and space, and they're okay. Yeah, time slows down, but then they can't imagine like time being zero or there not being time. That's like outside.
Well, my understanding when they get into the singularity stuff, their idea is that it's this entity that's smaller than the smallest. It's greater than the greatest. It's the source of everything, and it exists beyond and before time. So we can see they're looking for God, because that's all the qualities of God. It's of Krishna existing before time, smaller than the smallest subatomic particle, the source of everything, greater than the greatest, most powerful, and existing in a sense transcendental to time, because they don't want to call it divine or God or Krishna, but it's natural for the spiritual soul in the human body to look for that entity. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I think there was a kind of perhaps I've heard it before, but whatever, relatively recently that really connected. The eternality is not just a long time. And it's good news actually, because it's like, oh, it's so long, it's gonna be boring. I can imagine, just living for so long or whatever. But no, it's outside of time.
Yeah.
It's a different category. So that's
Transcendental category.
Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you, Prabhu's Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.